Good afternoon, everyone. It's fabulous to see everyone here. I hope everyone's really been enjoying this weekend. I can say that it's been tremendous for myself so far. I'm Cheryl Braille Lowenthal. I'm class of 2007 here at Williams, and I'm very, very pleased to welcome everyone to the Gamechanger Women's Sports and Societal Shifts panel. As a member of the Williams swim team, an avid ETH athletics supporter, and a proud member of the We Lead advisory board, I have the honor of introducing this panel of amazing, amazing people. And you've all probably heard already in the other sessions you've been to that We Lead is our women's philanthropy. Oh my goodness. I'm struggling. I got it. Initiative. It's after lunch. Need more coffee. Working to just close our important gender gap, right? And maybe one of the last remaining gaps, at the gender level here at Williams, and really trying to get the Alumni Fund leadership gift level to about $2,500. So if you look, feel free to find me, but if you look at the back of the bookmarks that are out there, there's a QR code. You can learn more about We Lead. We've made a ton of progress and over Zoom meetings, but now we've actually met in person, which is amazing. But you can help us get to the finish line. So together we will get Williams to the next chapter with possibilities and attacks. But no further ado, I'm excited to learn from our speakers today. We have Barbara Good, class of 82, Izzy Lowell, class of 02, Rebecca Allen, my classmate in 2007, and our moderator, Diane Williams, class of 2002. So I'll hand it over to you.
All right, so first off, I want you to make sure you introduce yourself to the person you're sitting next to. Please say hi. Okay.
The mic's beside you on the
Might
seat.
as well.
You should have one beside you.
Hello. All right, second audience participation moment, because then you get to listen to us. So I'd like you to please raise your hand if you participated in a varsity or club sport while at Williams. Fantastic. Keep it up. Raise both hands if you participated in 2 or more sports while at Williams. Yay! Cool. Now shout them out. What were the sports? Volleyball. Basketball, field hockey, good. Please raise your hand if you never participated in anything sporty at Williams. Yes, welcome. Awesome. And then I'd like you to raise your hand if you were at least recruited or you actually tried rugby or crew while at Williams. Everybody does. Ultimate might be in there too, I'm not sure. So I'm Diane Williams, and it's a real treat to be here today. I want to thank the organizers, especially Wendy Coakley, who brought this panel together. So we're going to focus on a lot of individual stories about being athletes at Williams and the legacy of that involvement. But I'm a historian, so I'm going to start with a little bit of history and context to get us going. In 1971, as Williams went fully co-ed, the Association for Intercollegiate Athletics, the AIAW, was just beginning. This women-led athletic governance organization created a sport culture that it was dedicated to sport for the well-being and educational experience of women students, a departure from the commercially based model that the NCAA had that was men only. The following year, in June 1972, Title IX was signed into law, just a few months before the AIW's first championship season. Title IX was not actually originally designed for athletics. It was really about sexual harassment, discriminatory pay, and access to academic programs. Women argued sport should be a part of Title IX, and by the end of the decade, there were guidelines on athletic equity. To my knowledge, Williams was a part of the AIW early on, and we'll get to that. In 1981, the NCAA offered its own fully funded women's championships, which bankrupted the cash-strapped AIW. For the last 40 years, Williams varsity athletes compete under the NCAA, a governing body with fluctuating commitment to full gender equity, which may have been felt at the college level at times. Title IX has been subjected to more legal scrutiny than most other laws, and no school has ever lost federal funding, though few are in compliance. Women of color have not benefited equally under Title IX, as schools add sports that are predominantly played by white middle-class girls. And women in athletic administration and coaching, the numbers of them have dropped dramatically since the late 70s, or since the early 70s, when the AIW was in charge. In the last 50 years of women's intercollegiate sport, there is a lot to celebrate and much to learn from. I study the AIW as a powerful reminder that change doesn't happen in straight lines, from bad to better. There are elements of those early days, underfunded and under-resourced as they were, that were also incredible, innovative, creative, and powerful. Social change, including the normalization of women's intercollegiate athletics, is messy. Just when we celebrate how far we've come, stories of abuse, racism, and homophobia surface, highlighting continued discrimination. Like an athletic competition, I suppose, the history and realities of women's sport are complex, and with so much going on behind the scenes. The buried history of the AIW reminds us of the stories that have been silenced and the lost heroes and allies that remain to be discovered and celebrated. So for many of us in this room and beyond, sport was a personal, emotional, physical, political, and powerful part of our college years, and its impact lingers far beyond our time in the Purple Valley. I'm going to start by asking these wonderful panelists a few questions, and then we will open it up for a discussion, and we're glad you're here. Thank you. All right. So, panel. Okay, I'd like you to please introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your involvement with sports at Williams. What are you proudest of, and what do you wish had been different? Barb, you want to start?
Am I on? All right. I'm not a good public speaker, but I'm going to fake it. So Barb Good, class of '82, on the swim dive team, and also played rugby all 4 years here at Williams. Loved both of them, but probably the thing I'm most proud of was we were the first women's team to win a national championship at Williams back in '82. It was awesome. We were all so proud of it, for the school. But following up on Diane's AIAW, we had opted that year to go to the NCAA, the first NCAA championship for women. And part of our reasoning for that was we had to fund ourselves going to nationals. The school didn't pay for it. We had to finance it, and it was upwards of $500, which in 1982 was a lot of money and very difficult for us to manage. Plus, the possibility of winning the first NCAA championship was also a factor. And so we opted to go with that, probably to the demise of the AIAW, and in hindsight, maybe would have been different. But back in '82, that's the path we took. And very excitedly, we did win, and it was awesome. It was great. The one thing for the second half of that question, what could have been different? We came back to Williams. We were so excited, pumped up, ready to go, and there was nothing. No recognition other than from the men's team. When we got back, they were as excited as we were about having won, and they celebrated with us. However, short-lived, because then they had to head off to their nationals, which they did not win. They were up there. They were top 5, but they did not, pull off the win as we had. And so that was somewhat disappointing, to not be recognized by the school that we were so proud of representing Williams College. We just won nationals. Okay. I will applaud Maud because we just had a 40th anniversary Zoom in the spring, last spring. And the first thing Maud said on the Zoom to all of us, we had over 100 people on it, was, I want to apologize and we want to congratulate you because that was a huge accomplishment at Williams and you should have been recognized. So a big thank you to Maud for that. And then one other thing, I just want to show you a picture. I wasn't organized enough to get these out earlier, but we were recognized by the Williams Record when we got back. And at the bottom of this has the picture, Women Win Nationals. But more importantly, I want you to look at this. It'll give you an idea of how much $500 was for us. The top, it says, tuition jumps to $10,731 a year. And that was a 10% increase from 1981. So $500 to us trying to get to nationals was huge, and it was a huge factor, so.
Is this on? Yes. All right. I'm Izzy Lowell. I use she, her pronouns. I was a rower at Williams, and now I run a telemedicine practice for transgender and non-binary people that covers 25 states across the South. And we see patients of all ages. Right now we're dealing with a lot of anti-trans laws, et cetera. At Williams, as I said, I was a rower. I'm most proud of being part of the team. It really was a life-changing experience, and my senior year, we skipped all of senior week. We barely made it back for graduation. We got back at 2 in the morning of graduation, in order to go to the first Div 3 Nationals, and I was the stroke of the boat that won the first ever Div 3 rowing nationals. And something I wish were different.
Sure.
The boathouse is really far. It takes like 35 minutes to get to the boathouse. That was such a drag. And there were no bathrooms or changing rooms or anything. It was just like this one big room. We'd all change on the bus and then just change in this big area and just like not look at everybody else. I don't know. It was just like men's, women's teams. We were all just all together in this one big area. I think they redid the boathouse. I don't know. My cousin keeps asking me for money to help with the boathouse. So.
Feel free to give us updates. Rebecca.
I'm Rebecca Allen. I'm class of 2007. I am the founder of a women's footwear brand called Rebecca Allen. Follow us on Instagram. And I also have a hair care tools brand called Helix Hair Labs that just launched. Also follow that on Instagram. And I played field hockey for Alex, who's sitting here, Alex Burrell, and Chris Mason. And it's interesting. I feel like I greatly benefited from a lot of this history that, frankly, I wasn't very familiar with, which I've really enjoyed learning more about. And so the second half of the question is like, what would you do differently? I went to an all-girls school for high school, and so we were very used to cheering for ourselves, and like there wasn't a boys' team, like there wasn't like, oh, we didn't get this, we were, whatever. And at Williams, I thankfully felt like we very much had what we needed to go out and, we were still super scrappy. It wasn't cushy, but it was, it was a really great time. But one of my greatest memories, which might be contested, but I will say it's true. I scored the first goal when they redid the turf field, and I scored the first goal on that field. Nobody cares. And I think they've redone it since then. So, yeah.
You still scored the first one.
Nobody.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So I'm curious, in what ways did your participation in athletics at Williams contribute to the person you are today? You can interpret that however you'd like. Brian, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm a swim coach. I've been teaching and coaching pretty much my whole life. And after I left Williams for 2 years, I was a psychology major and thought I wanted to go into psych, and worked at a school for kids, and it just wasn't my cup of tea. And so I left and lifeguarded for a little bit, and then took a job on the North Shore through a connection here at Williams. And he connected me with a club up in the north, and started coaching and teaching and learning about running a business up there. And kind of have been along that path for a while. Moved to the South Shore. I did sell cars for 3 years. That was the only hiatus from coaching, because I was doing that, and then got back into the coaching. And 11 years ago, started my own club, Sailfish Swim Team. A lot of fun. We have over 200 kids at very different levels from ages 6 to 18. A lot of fun. Our goal is to get each of them to be the best they can be, both in and out of the pool. And for some of those kids, it's learning to swim. For other kids, it's making their highest level of swim. So that's a lot of fun. Just totally lost my thought. Diane, help me out here.
You're doing great.
No, the other thing is I also, with rugby, my rugby connection. So swim has been my career, but my rugby connection, I met my husband playing rugby. I played for Boston Women, he played for Boston Men. We did a lot of traveling with his club, but our honeymoon was with 36 of our nearest and dearest friends to New Zealand on a rugby tour for my Boston Women's Rugby Club, which was amazing. So rugby and swim have had a huge part in my whole career since then.
How did sports affect my?
Yes.
Person
you are today.
Person I am today. So, in many ways, but I think one of the greatest things that I've kept with me from my time rowing at Williams is just being part of that amazing team. I'm still in touch with. There's a group WhatsApp chat with a dozen teammates, and somebody's on there every day, and we support each other through everything, through life and work and adversity, and. What's helped me a lot in my career lately is putting my head down and just carrying on in the face of tremendous adversity in my work, and standing with my team, the other providers, and the team that I work with now, sticking together, doing what we need to do, and having that perseverance to power through a lot of adversity.
I feel like when we had our pre-call, we were talking a lot about kind of some of the cliches of like, you know, that sports, you learn to work on a team and you do all this stuff. And I was reflecting on that on my way up and thinking about, you know, what has playing at Williams, but just playing sports in general for me. And I'm a founder, and so I'm always like getting told no, or like, you know, people shutting doors in my face. And I think that for me, sport really has taught me to be like creative in my pursuit of a goal, like not literally a goal, but that
That too.
that too. But you know, I think you always are making split-second decisions based on the information that you have, and you know what you know right in front of you. And as much as like you're always trying to be a strategic thinker, but you know, in business, when you're starting something, you have to be much more tactical, and you have to think about, like, you have to kind of like work with what you have in the moment that you have it, and always things are always going wrong, and you always have to be changing course and kind of being creative. And so I actually think that it's not just like resilience, but the creativity that I am doing every day of like, okay, this didn't work, we're gonna try something else. Like, we know what the end goal is, and I can be creative in my pursuit for getting there, and dusting off, like, you know, all of the grit and resilience and like the relentlessness that you need comes with that. But I think actually the creativity is maybe like a little more nuanced piece of it that I was ruminating on my way up.
All right. What would you tell yourself as an incoming first-year student athlete? You all can answer these questions too. Just wait.
Just to go for it, get involved. I mean, for me, every season I had a sport, which I needed. That kept me focused and organized. But to get out there and explore other things that are available to you, especially here at Williams, there's so much variety, diversity, all kinds of opportunities for you to get involved in. So to go outside your comfort zone and, you know, outside the box, and just really get involved in more and more things, because there is so much to offer and you can learn so much. Rugby was new to me when I was here. I had a couple of upperclassmen ask me if I wanted to play, and that's how I got, initially I said, no, I'm a swimmer. Coach Sam was not happy I played rugby, but we did survive and we got through it. And having Mrs. Sam in the infirmary was not helpful, because anytime you stopped in there, Sam got direct word that there's a problem. But that's the thing. There is so much to be offered here. Take advantage of it, is what I would recommend.
I would say be yourself. I think for me, one of the very valuable experiences of being on the team that I was on was that you know, there weren't, at that time, there weren't a ton of people who were out as gay or lesbian, and certainly gender wasn't really on the radar yet as something that people talked a lot about. And I just got to be myself with my sexuality and my gender as I was, and was fully accepted for who I am as I am. And that was a really valuable, affirming experience that I've kept with me for my life, and just be who you are, and a real team will welcome and accept you and love you for that.
Are there any first-year William? Are there students here? No. I'm just curious.
We'll send them notes.
I did not play sports all seasons at Williams, and I probably should have, because it would have had a better GPA. But what was the prompt? What are we talking
What would you tell yourself?
What would I tell?
As you're
Oh, right,
coming
right,
in
yeah,
as a
right.
first year?
I mean, I think the same thing. Like there is a lot. There's a lot beyond sport at Williams to take advantage of. I think my friends, as alumni now, all talk about, oh my gosh, there's so much great stuff up here that we weren't kind of digging into. And I think also just immersing yourself with people who are doing different stuff too. I think that's really important. And I think that serves for, reaps rewards down the road.
Can you, okay, I think I keep turning it off. Sorry about that. So I think we've done something kind of amazing. I really want to have space for conversation, and particularly because there are obviously gaps also in decades up here of experience. And so I think I'm going to pause we'll chat, but I want to invite conversation. You can respond to the questions I just asked. You can ask questions of us, of any of us, and let's chat a little bit. Let's recreate this. So the history is all of us. We're all part of that. And sometimes I think that's hard to wrap your head around in some ways. But I really want to welcome you to chime in, share what you were proudest of in your participation and what you wish had been different, how your participation impacted your life and your direction or who you are today, and anything you would tell yourself as an incoming athlete.
Is it on? Okay. My name is Beth Connolly Caputi, and I played field hockey and lacrosse, class of '82. Alex, hello, I can't see you because I'm behind the engineer board. I have 4 children, and all of whom played sports in college, and my youngest, who decided after a year that her team was way too possessive and consuming of her life, decided to stop playing lacrosse, and it was as if the college opened up in such a way that she had amazing experience. My other 2 daughters, who had wonderful athletic experiences, but very, very narrow experiences because of I feel like today when you're on a sports team, and that's why I'm saying Alex, but today when you're on a sports team, it's as if that's your life. And I wonder how much. Whereas when I was here, I felt like I got to do all sorts of things, singing and, Purple Key and just many more things than my own daughters did. And I'm curious whether you guys, who are maybe a little bit younger, felt that way, and whether that's something that could change a little bit. Just curious.
That's a great question. I'm hand it off to any of you.
You could answer that question.
Do you want me to answer? Yeah. Okay, Izzy's asked me to answer the question too. So, I agree with what you're saying. When I graduated from Williams, I actually went to work at Colgate University for a while for their Women's Studies program, and it was really fun because I ended up volunteer coaching because I couldn't help myself. But I got to be involved in all these other things that were happening at the college and go to the events I hadn't been able to attend because they were at 4 o'clock, and sports student groups that I hadn't been able to be involved with. And I found it to be like a little bonus couple of years I got to do some of that kind of community work and activism that I hadn't been able to here because I was involved in athletics. That said, as a student here, I also was very involved with and ran the rape and sexual assault hotline, put on Take Back the Night marches, and made a point to always invite my coaches and my teams to my events, and they came. And that was one of the most powerful sort of bridging of this. It's all me, and that's all me being involved in things. And so I'd invite my professors to my games and my meets, and I'd invite my team to the events going on, and that to me was really powerful. But it was hard, it was a lot, for sure.
I think the same, Diane is much more outgoing and and did a lot more things than I did in college. But I think Laura Day, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but the a cappella group I sang with had a limit of, was it two? 2 rowers were allowed, and that was the cap. And the only reason I got in was because I have a low voice, and the other one left. Lisbon got left the a cappella group, so they were like, fine, you can come. Yeah. So yeah, it limited things a lot. I had to choose extracurricular activities very carefully, and rowing really dominated my life, and I loved that. I wouldn't have traded that for anything. But I'm sure there's 1,000 things I missed because of it. But that was, I would do it over the same.
Everybody, can you, okay, hi. Thalia Meehan, class of 83. I lived with a bunch of Barb Good's crazy swimmer friends, and they were a ton of fun. And my other just one-off is Barb recruited me to Boston Women's Rugby, and I played for 1 year until I tore my ACL, but it was really fun until I tore my ACL. I wanted to follow up on the question here, though, because I think, I played 3 sports. I played field hockey, basketball, softball. Softball was a club team. It was like the second year that I was here, and now they're in the NCAA tournament. I hope they're winning this afternoon. So that's different. Yeah. But I was curious about just watching, I don't have kids of my own, but where kids specialize in a sport now, and I think it's much harder to be able to play, even broader than things outside of sports, but being able to play more than one sport. And the other is a question. There was a PE requirement. I don't know if it's still here, because I took fencing with Lillian Bostert, and I took golf at Taconic, and now I'm an 11 handicap. So it's my sport. I wasn't looking for applause, but it's my sport of choice now since my knees won't let me do anything else. But I'm curious about, are students multi-sport athletes, or is it just too hard to do that? And is there still a PE requirement?
Well, as the younger person on the panel,
Just one up here.
there definitely were 2 sport athletes when I was class of 2007. I totally agree with you that kids are now, having to specialize so much earlier. There's so much more pressure around sport, and a lot of that is around like getting into college too, right? And I just think that I know there was an article, I think it was in The Atlantic, about how a lot of schools were like defunding programs, especially some of the kind of like upper, like squash, the kind of like like sports that are like cost prohibitive, right, for a lot of people, and in an effort to make that like athletic edge kind of less about like how you get in and why. And I'm curious myself, because I have young kids, and I just have to imagine that there has to be kind of like a reckoning for all of that, because, frankly, I loved playing field hockey, but at least once a week, I'm like, I should have played tennis, because like, what am I doing with a field hockey stick in Brooklyn, New York, on a Saturday, So I think I think there just has to be kind of like a practicality for it too, because that can also take the joy out of it, right? But I'm curious myself to learn.
And coaching, I coach a club team in swimming, and my club team has a different philosophy than most of the club teams in the area, which is, I only want you training 3 days a week. I don't want you training 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days a week, which a lot of the kids are doing, but that's going to impact them later on. You used to be able to walk onto high school sports back, I'm old, I know, but back in my day, you could play high school even if you hadn't played it, the sport before. You can't do that anymore. You're not going to make the team if you haven't been playing club until you get there. Still in swim, yes, you can, because I coach high school teams and I have non-swimmers. We're teaching them how to breathe. And it makes it interesting. So my club has a different philosophy than most of the clubs in the area. And I lose swimmers because of it. They're like, well, I'm never going to get into college or be able to compete on my high school team if I'm not swimming 5, 6, or 7 days a week. And I say, that's true, that's possible, but you're also not going to be burnt out if you swim on my team. And you're going to get to high school, and you're going to high school and college, and you're going to excel. I said, but it's totally up to you. So that's kind of the philosophy I've taken. Got it a little bit from Williams, because when I swam at Williams, we swam in the 4-lane, 25-yard Muir pool. And that's another thing about swimming at Williams. There have been 3 coaches at Williams College in its history. Coach Muir, Coach Sam, and Steve Custer. And that's huge to have that, and they all had the same philosophy. But we swim in a very small pool, very much a community, but we only swam an hour to an hour and a half a day, and the only time we did double sessions was during winter study. And I think that's changed now. I think they swim a lot more. However, we were able to take a group of women and win nationals with that. I don't agree with the specific sport by age 6. I think you should diversify and be doing a lot of sports as long as you can, and that's how my program at home is designed. I say, I have one of them, I said, go play baseball, go play softball, do lacrosse, and then they usually come back to me and say, well, I have lacrosse Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, can I only swim on Sunday? Like, if that's what you want to do, we'll work it out. But that's just a different philosophy. But it is hard, and I'm glad my kids are grown. So it's going to be interesting for my grandchildren.
Hi, Ellen Vargas, 71, and there were no sports for women at Williams when I was here, so I probably wouldn't have participated anyway, but I can at least pretend maybe I would have. My question is, and this is not really informed so much based on my Williams experience, but some years ago I did quite a bit of Title IX athletics work, including litigation and regulatory advocacy. And I mean, I consulted a little bit with some folks here, probably in the 80s, about some Title IX issues. And I'm not looking to create problems where there aren't any, but this just, the way you're presenting it, it sounds like everything was just wonderful. And that would not be consistent with everything I know about women's sports over many years. So I'm interested to know, there must have been challenges. I can't believe that there weren't. I know Williams did a lot better than many schools. It had always a large offering of sports. It didn't cut back on them nearly as much as other schools. And most of the reason, most of the schools would blame it on Title IX and say that they would cut back men's sports, the men's minor sports, claiming that they had to do it without thinking about how much money they were putting into football and so forth. But in any event, maybe there were no problems, which would be lovely. But yeah, I'm sort of not believing it. So I would love to hear about the challenges that you had.
I'll start.
As women, on women's teams.
I appreciate your question, and I hope that my opening gave a little bit of a similar vibe. That's why I started there, to say when we uncritically celebrate 50 years of the signing of Title IX, and yet the reality is that likely no school is in full compliance in athletics, period, as you well know, for a variety of reasons, but it often boils down to decision making, and I understand that budgets are a thing, but also where you're putting your money is also how you're exhibiting value. And so I think we have a benefit of having 3 people who had really, really good experiences up here, which is awesome. Mine was a little bit more complicated in some ways, and I think that is also part of what launched my own interest in critically studying this history, which is actually what I do. I'm a professor, I teach about all of this, and I researched AIAW, hence why I taught you all about that today. Take your moments. And so I think what I'm really interested in general is that question as well. Yes, things were good, what could have been better, maybe? Or what wasn't good, because it's not always good. And Williams is a special place, but it's also not a unique place. Having done advocacy with the Rape and Sexual Assault Hotline during my 4 years here certainly colors how you engage with the community, and the reality that anything you find anywhere else is also here. And that includes sexism, and that includes having to invite people to come to my volleyball game because the homecoming game is the same time as the football game, and they're only advertising the football game. And I'm like, hey, we're right up the hill, and we're pretty fun, and yet still having to do that. I got very good at inviting people to things because I'm a woman athlete, and I've been doing it my whole career. And that's a minor example, but I think you're right, and I think sport often has such a positive glow about it that it can be hard to be the one that says, yeah, it wasn't great, and it was terrible for my mental health, or I had an abusive coach. And those realities exist within it too. And to me, the best thing we can do is to recognize and honor those and make space for conversation around what needs to change as well. I was just telling my students at the end of the semester, I am just done with women's sport having to be secondary. You have got to be kidding me, right? How much longer do we have to say, we're here, we're doing it, and it still gets justified. It's just how it's been. So I appreciate that question. I welcome anyone up here if you want to chime in a little bit, or anybody else, you're welcome to. Oh, got some hands. I'm here for it.
Yeah, it's going to change the topic.
Okay. Great.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Blow, class of 80, and things are good and bad. When I came here in 76, I played a little field hockey. I knew there was a women's cross-country team, and then in the spring, I had run track and played basketball and field hockey, done all the things in high school. So it was in the announcements, their spring track meeting in Brofman Hall, which is not here anymore. So I just went. I kind of had a reputation of being late most of the time to stuff, but I was early that day. So I'm the first person in the room, and people kept coming in, and I noticed they kind of look at me, and okay. And then I kept waiting for some women to come in the room, and no women ever came in the room. So I thought, oh, there's no spring women's track team? But I kind of had a similar experience in high school. I went to a very small high school in New Jersey, which we had 300 people total in the school, and class of 76, we graduated 76 people. So they didn't have a women's track team there, and so I had gone out and become the manager for the men's team and took the stats and called in the stats to the newspaper and all that kind of stuff. So I just kind of said, well, I guess I'm going to have to do this again. So I didn't have a lot of negative. It was just kind of like, who's that strange woman and why is she doing a workout? I went to the weight room. I developed my own weight program. The guys were nice. Nobody ever said anything negative. They'd watch me work out and help me with the weights if I didn't put the thing in the right place. And Coach Farley kind of looked at me, and this is the original Coach Farley. He never really said anything negative or positive. He just kind of looked at me, and so I said, well, I guess I'm going to, help with the men's team. And long and short of it, by the time I got to senior year, I had convinced our volleyball and basketball coach, Beth Hudson, to come out and coach the women. So I was really, I guess it's about 20 years ago, and I, looked in the announcements, and I'm like, the women's spring track in Florida? I'm like, what? They actually had, before track season started. So I was excited about that, but then again, I was a little concerned. Is it going to become something different at Williams? I was comfortable. We had track, but it wasn't like, all this pressure on me. And so I worried about the women who are now in track and that, you're going to spring training and you're, is it taking over? And I just kind of was like, I want them to enjoy it, but I feel there's a place in sports where you can just kind of go over the edge and it becomes all sports.
Well, track when I was here was amazing, and Amy can speak to that, yeah.
Hi, I'm Donna Lisker, class of 88. I was also a rower. And I rowed all 4 years. I started as a walk-on, an entirely unathletic walk-on, but by my senior year I was the captain. And it was both a transformative and incredibly positive experience because of the women and the coach and the Chris Cruz and the experience. And it was also the one place at Williams that I encountered the most sexism. And I know the 80s aren't represented here, but they were a challenging decade vis-a-vis Title IX. I'm also a gender scholar who studies Title IX. And from 1984 to 1988 were the 4 years legally that Title IX was not enforced. And I don't know if Williams consciously took advantage of that, but the women's coach reported to the men's coach in rowing. And so we were second-class citizens in the biggest possible way, and which was so frustrating because we cared so much and we were so tight. Now, the good news is that we were activists about it, and a group of us met secretly. We took ourselves very seriously. We met secretly. We didn't want to get our coach in trouble. And we petitioned Bob Peck, who was the athletic director, to make the women's team varsity. We gathered data, we did our research, we solicited our parents, and in the most anticlimactic meeting whatsoever, he looked at the data and he said, hey, you're right, you should be varsity, and by the way, I'm gonna make the men's team varsity too. Which was fine, I mean, you know, fine. But so this group of women, small group of women who graduated 86, 87, 88, we faced so much sexism that we made a change. At Williams, we were so pleased, Izzy, to see what your team did.
The history stayed on. We all cherished that and clung to that sense of equality and scrappiness, and that history absolutely stuck with the team.
Yeah, so it's important to remember both sides. Like, athletics is absolutely transformative at a place like Williams, and there were some rough years in there.
Thank you so much for sharing that story, both of you.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Holly, class of 2012. I did not play sports at Williams, and I work in athletics now. I'm a strength and conditioning coach who never set foot in the LaSalle weight room because it was scary. And now I teach a winter study course there about gender and athletics. Hey. And it strikes me, as we're talking about Title IX and young athletes and the struggles that we faced as women, the very real tragedy that's happening right now, that conservative lawmakers are using Title IX language to exclude trans and non-binary people, children, from participating in sports, and it is a travesty. And I want to know, like, we are people, like, I have benefited from Title IX as a woman coach in a very male-dominated space, but I benefited from the work that you all did. So, like, what can we do now for the children who are not being able to just live their young lives?
Sure. So I'm going to answer a slightly different question and come back to your question. So I was thinking about this panel, thinking somebody's going to ask about trans women in sports, which is what. I'm so glad you did.
Or it was going to be me, so. Okay.
And I like the way you asked the question, which is what can we do about it? And in answering that, I'll start with my very brief sports/medical opinion about whether there really is an advantage. What we're asking is it unfair? Is it for trans women to be part of women's sports teams? And I think the answer is it depends. For example, there are a lot of different ways to think about this, but taking different people. So someone who is a trans girl and goes on puberty blockers and never goes through male puberty and grows up just like any other woman would be more or less physiologically indistinguishable from a cisgender woman, transgender meaning on the opposite side of cisgender meaning on the same. So someone who's assigned female at birth and goes up to be a woman versus someone who's assigned male at birth and grows up to be a woman. If that person never went through male puberty, they would be very similar, probably indistinguishable. We don't have data exactly, but then there's a case of someone who does go through some or all of male puberty, maybe grows a few inches taller than they would have been, broader, develops more muscle mass. If that person then transitions after they've gone through puberty, this is a great argument, by the way, for allowing children and teens to go through the correct puberty once. That's a whole different topic that I won't get into. But so if someone does go through some or all of male puberty, that gives them a different body shape than they would have had. And in some sports, that could be an advantage, even if they later go on to be on testosterone blockers and have their testosterone levels lowered to that of any other woman. That could give them advantages in sports such as swimming or rowing. The sort of brute force sports, I would call them, sports where body size and strength really matter. I think in some cases there are advantages that trans women would have over cis women. In endurance sports, like running, for example, there's pretty much minimal advantage because you don't benefit from necessarily having larger size, larger muscle mass. So it really matters more in those really strength, body size-based sports. At the Olympic level, the cutoff for testosterone levels for transgender women is set at twice the max cisgender level. So the testosterone range for women is, let's say, 20 to 70. That cutoff is at 140, which is problematic for a lot of reasons. There are just differences in genetics that cause people to have elevated testosterone levels, whether they're trans or not. We have several different ways of lowering testosterone. One of them involves a medicine that's a blood pressure medicine so that it acts as a diuretic. It's very effective at lowering testosterone levels, but it can cause dehydration, lower blood pressure, which as an elite athlete is not a good thing. The other medicine we have doesn't lower testosterone levels reliably, but it makes it ineffective. So that person would have no masculinizing effects from testosterone, but their testosterone level still may be above that cutoff. So it's better for sort of physiologically in sport, but would still perhaps disqualify them at the Olympic level. Otherwise, surgery is an option, but that would take somebody out of sport for a long time and make it difficult to recover and get back into sport. So at the Olympic level, I think it's a difficult question to ensure complete fairness. But I think what we lose sight of is the point of sports. What we all take from this, what we're talking about here, what we're talking about in our lives, isn't who won or lost the Olympic race. That's very important to a fraction of a percent of people in the world. Not me. I was never in a million years going to be an Olympic athlete. So what we are completely losing sight of is why people participate in sports, why that's a good thing, why that's an extraordinarily good thing for youth, especially today. With the world that they're in, there's nothing better than being physically active and being on a team. And I don't care if my 6-year-old is on the winningest team or the losingest team. I want them to just be part of a team and play. And so I think what we can do is remember what's important and why people play sports, and that it has really nothing to do with gender. And just bringing the conversation back to that whenever this comes up, and forget about the Olympic intricacies, because that doesn't matter to 99.999% of us. It's about why sports is important, why it's good for kids.
I was going to ask a follow-up question to you, Izzy. Just what can, regular people, what is the most kind of immediate, actionable thing that we can do to support trans kids, not just in sports, but in general?
Yes, that's a good.
I'm going to start. There's a couple organizations I would recommend. Yeah. Athlete Ally is one that does really great work around sport advocacy, and Trans Athlete is another. Okay. There are other that I can't think of. I feel like supporting trans kids is also about supporting all kids in sport, and so also maybe I'm a teacher, right, so I talk about this in class, and I humanize it as much as I can, and I try to invite people to think, again, just like Izzy said, about what is the point of what we're doing, and why does this matter, and how are some of these discussions actually just wrapped up in ideas about gender that we might not actually support anyways. And hopefully redirect people to some of the things in women's sport that actually do need to be addressed, like sexual violence, like racism, like inequality of access to participation. There's plenty we can address that's important. In terms of supporting trans kids, I think certainly speaking up for them is huge. I'm not sure.
Yeah, don't go anywhere in the South if you're trans of any age. I think modeling as well. In sport, I'm less connected with trans kids in sports and more from the medical side and hormone therapy and treatment. But as adults, treating each other with respect and asking people, it's okay to ask somebody's pronouns, for example. You know, you can say your own. If you're not sure about anything, introduce yourself and include your pronouns, and that is kind of a cue to everyone else that you're aware of gender and that there are different genders. There are more than two genders. So modeling for everybody, our peers and our children, how to be respectful to each other, I think is really helpful.
Totally agree. When I started the team, we had a trans come to our team because it wasn't working on the team they were on, and treated them just like they were any other team member, and figured out how to make it work, and been with us ever since. And he'll be heading off to college next year, and looking forward to it. So it's just to treat everybody the same. He loved to swim, wanted to swim, and made it work for him.
So thank you all. We are at time. I want to encourage us to continue to think critically about our own experiences with sport, how we engage with sport. The history informs the present, informs the future we want to build, and sport is a big part of our society, obviously. And I invite you to continue to ask questions, talk to each other, talk to people older than you, listen to their stories, and learn from each other and keep building the world we want to create. Thank you to my wonderful panel, and have a good weekend.